exploded. I myself must have blacked out, though only for a fraction of a second. When I came round again, I saw, and my first look naturally went to Hitler, that he turned away from the conference table and went to the door right behind him, supported by Field Marshal Keitel. He, of course, looked somewhat worried, but didn't speak a word. And apart from that, I remember that his hair was somewhat on fire, that his left arm apparently was wounded because he supported this with the right hand, and particularly that his trousers were stripped almost in the whole length from foot to hip.
The briefcase containing the bomb had been moved, saving Hitler. The blast kills 4 of the officers to his right, but the leg of the oak table protects the Fuhrer, Heusinger, and Keitel. And yet, sitting beyond them, Jodl and Varlamont are wounded. The open windows of the conference room also help reduce the blast and lessen the casualties. Hitler hungers for revenge. He knows it has to be one of his officers. Only they knew the conference schedule was changed because of a visit from Mussolini. Guards are sent to scout for more bombs. Checkpoints are set up around the Wolf's lair. SS troops seal off the area. Everyone is checked by guards coming in and out of the compound. Hitler's interpreter, Paul Schmidt, recalls how, just hours later, Hitler goes ahead with his reception for Mussolini.
He looked his normal self, but he couldn't move his left arm or his right arm. He gave Mussolini, when the train entered the station, the small station at headquarters, he gave him his left hand with some difficulty. And then Mussolini knew nothing at all about the attempt on Hitler's life. He had come there to discuss the situation with him because he had a very gloomy opinion of things, of developments, and he needed some consolation, and that's why he'd come there. And therefore, his big eyes almost fell out of his head when Hitler told him about what had happened, how the bomb had exploded and so on. And then they sat together in that very room where the bomb had exploded underneath the table, where everything was upside down. It was just like a big bomb explosion. And then he turned his head round and showed him the hair that was singed at the back of his head. And then he described the table where the table had been. There was a big hole there. And he said, I leant over the table to read something on a map, when suddenly the table rushed up in my direction and came up to meet me. And then he drew the conclusion and said to Mussolini, after this narrow escape, because the bomb exploded underneath the table where I stood reading that paper, and I think that destiny worked again, and I am safe from these things. And after this narrow escape, I think that we shall also succeed in our greater common enterprise.
During the same afternoon, a sergeant reports to Martin Bormann, Hitler's private secretary. Colonel Stauffenberg had left in a great hurry after the explosion, leaving behind his briefcase. Bormann tells Hitler that Stauffenberg and his driver then bluffed their way through 2 checkpoints. At the first barrier, the guards hear the explosion, but Stauffenberg shows them valid identification and is allowed to pass. At the second barrier, Stauffenberg's car is halted. Angrily, he has to step out of the car and telephone one of the headquarters officers and is given permission to pass. From there, Stauffenberg's car drives through the Prussian forest of Gorlitz. The driver is seen throwing a brown paper package out of the car. It is later found to contain 75 grams of explosives and 2 detonators. By 1:15 p.m., Stauffenberg and his driver board an aircraft to Berlin, ready to launch the second phase of the plan. As far as they know, the Führer is dead. In Berlin, events are moving quickly. General Friedrich Olbricht, Stauffenberg's superior and co-conspirator, proclaims a state of emergency. Key points in the capital are seized by sympathetic soldiers. But it is in effect a coup d'etat aimed at the Nazi hierarchy. Olbricht orders Major Otto Rehmer to seal off the government quarter with his troops. But Rehmer, loyal to the Führer, refuses to believe that Hitler is dead. A few hours later, Rehmer receives a call from Hitler. "They tried to kill me," he says, "but I am alive. You are to restore order in Berlin for me." Rehmer turns the ministry into a command post and informs all military units in Berlin they are under his control. Propaganda Minister Joseph Goebbels then addresses the Führer's faithful troops, telling them of the plot to assassinate the Führer. Dr. Hans Gisevius, a co-conspirator, recalls how Stauffenberg's plan begins to crumble.
Then it was a performance you will never forget in your life. If somebody comes who just was supposed to have killed Hitler, he really was a master of the different rooms, and he rushed from one room to the other, and you heard the telephones ring. It was a permanent ringing from Paris, from Königsberg, from Vienna, wherever you liked. Maybe he made a certain overstatement and said, "Oh, he's dead," and "Oh, Keitel is lying." But in any case, he mastered that business to convince the reluctant phoners on the other side of the telephone.
But as messages go back and forth across the Third Reich, the Nazis are closing in on the conspirators.
I had certain trouble with Stauffenberg because the plans had failed. We had missed a lot of time. So I said during the hours in the Bendler Street to Stauffenberg again and again, "Stauffenberg, let's go ahead. Let's not wait till the troops are in. Let's start that whole business with the newscast. After all, that will be then something, if all other things fail, that we have gotten our version of the day in the air." But here you see the typical problem of an officer, staff officer, at least a German staff officer. Even this dynamic Stauffenberg did not like that idea. You see, he said, "No, we have made that plan, and orders are orders, and the troops will do their job, so it does not matter whether we do it in 1 hour or hour later." And so we missed that chance. Actually, the broadcasting house was not protected by SS guards, and we should have gone into it, and nobody had prevented it. It's a pity that this did not happen.
At the Berlin War Ministry, Stauffenberg and other key conspirators are surrounded. They include Olbricht, Werner von Heften, Merz von Kavernheim, and General Ludwig Beck, who would have assumed the role of head of state if Hitler was dead. With no way out, and their coup snuffed out by Goebbels and Rehmer, they can do nothing but await their arrest. Goebbels has saved Berlin for Hitler. General Fromm leads the arresting party. At the ensuing trial, General Herpner, a co-conspirator, describes what happened next.
Da trat der Generaloberst in die Türrahmen. Zu beiden Seiten von ihm Offiziere mit Maschinenpistolen.
Ja. Welches Zimmer war das?
Das Dienstzimmer von Generaloberst Fromm.
Das Dienstzimmer von Generaloberst Fromm.
Und sagte, so meine Herren, jetzt mache ich das ebenso mit Ihnen, wie Sie das heute Mittag mit mir gemacht haben. Dann sagt er, so, also im Namen des Führers ein Standgericht von mir, ich erinnere nicht mehr, ob er sagte berufen oder hat stattgefunden, ein Standgericht von mir hat 4 Herren zum Tode verurteilt. Und zwar hier diesen Herrn, den obersten Generalstab Merz, den Generalinfanterie Olbricht, diesen Oberst, dessen Namen ich nicht mehr kenne, damit meinte er Schaufelday, und diesen Oberleutnant hier. Ich sagte noch zu der, so wie Oberleutnant fast einen von den Herren, die neben ihm standen, Sie nehmen ein paar Leute und werden sie sofort unten im Hof dieses Urteil sofort vollstrecken.
Stauffenberg and the other conspirators are taken outside the building and immediately shot. A bronze plaque commemorates where they fell. Beck is left to commit suicide. After he refuses, he is also shot by a fellow officer. At 10 p.m. the same night, Hitler records a broadcast to the German people. He tells the nation of the assassination attempt and his miraculous survival. The most determined German plot to kill Hitler has failed. Hitler is now determined to inflict a terrible vengeance. It is to be a long and bloody purge of the Third Reich. A July bomb plot to assassinate Hitler was the closest any group of German conspirators come to killing him. But the plot fails. The day after, Hitler is already planning a terrible vengeance. He and Luftwaffe Chief Hermann Goering attend the funeral of General Korten, one of the 4 officers killed in the blast. He also visits the wounded still in the hospital after the explosion. On Hitler's orders, arrests begin throughout the Third Reich. Senior conspirators are rooted out and immediately arrested, including Admiral Canaris, head of the Abwehr Intelligence Service. General Franz Halder, Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces, and Dr. Hilmar Schacht, pre-war governor of the Reichsbank. The revelation is a profound blow to Hitler and his ability to trust anyone. Everyone entering his presence is now checked and searched. He has the corpse of Stauffenberg cremated. Other conspirators are also executed, hung from meat hooks by piano wire nooses. Their last moments of agony are filmed for Hitler to see. Field Marshal von Kluge, commander of the armies of the Western Front, kills himself rather than face investigation in Berlin. Even Hitler's favorite general, Erwin Rommel, is implicated in the plot. He is given the choice of suicide in return for no reprisals against his family. He takes the poison and receives a lavish state funeral. But other conspirators are displayed at notorious show trials in Berlin. Retired Field Marshal von Witzleben is the highest-ranking officer on trial. As one of the opposition's earliest conspirators, he is humiliated by being stripped of his uniform and dressed in trousers with no belt to hold them up. Presiding Judge Roland Freisler takes particular pleasure in sentencing him.
Wir sind und wofür wir leben, das Opfer unserer Krieger, Volk, Führer und Reich an unsere Feinde verraten. Sie werden mit dem Tode bestraft.
Altogether, some 5,000 people are executed. By mid-1944, most Allied commanders are now convinced that Hitler is a liability to his own people, but British plans for his assassination move forward. It is called Operation Foxley. Its details have remained secret for 50 years until finally released by the British Public Record Office. Operation Foxley's plans center around Hitler's residence near Berchtesgaden. 4 options are considered. The first proposal involves the Führer's favorite drink, apple juice. A local anti-Nazi agent would infiltrate Hitler's kitchens and place a tasteless, odorless poison into the juice. The effects would slowly kill him after 6 or 7 days. SOE scientists also suggests the use of anthrax spores. The second plan involves shooting Hitler while on one of his regular walks. Secret papers reveal that 1 or 2 snipers would be dressed in German mountain soldier uniforms. They would lie in wait for Hitler as he walks to the tea house where he eats breakfast. Their sniper guns would contain explosive bullets. If they fail, a backup team armed with a bazooka would then fire a shell at the tea house, obliterating it completely. A third plan is to ambush Hitler's car as it leaves the Berghof, the bazooka team catching him as he drives along isolated mountain roads. A fourth plan is to drop a battalion of the Special Air Service on the Berghof. The paratroopers are to arrive under cover of an air raid and then overwhelm the elite guards. All these options are incredibly risky, bearing in mind Hitler's rapid changes of movement and the considerable strength of his security teams.
There was just no prospect of getting close enough. And Hitler took a great deal of trouble about his personal security, having bothered about it a lot in the street fighting phase of the Nazi movement back in the 1920s, and was very good at suddenly changing his mind at the last moment, which made him an extra difficult task for any assassination team.
Other assassination plans focus on Hitler's special armored train. A German prisoner of war detained by the British had been a steward on the train and gives detailed information on its layout to British SOE agents. Planting a bomb on board or contaminating the train's water supply with poison is considered. Hitler would then ingest the poison with his regular cups of coffee or tea. But the intelligence used to make these plans becomes quickly outdated, and by March 1945, such schemes are abandoned.
In the end, the chiefs of staff decided that they would rather have Hitler where he was, taking the kind of lunatic decisions he took, to the dismay of his generals, and they didn't want him replaced by a competent general.
April 30th, 1945. The center of Berlin is under assault from Soviet troops. Deep beneath the shell-shattered garden of the Reichschancellery, Hitler and Eva Braun retire to their suite inside the Führerbunker. At 3:30 p.m., a shot rings out. The few remaining Nazi staff step into the room to find that Eva Braun has taken cyanide and Hitler has shot himself. World War II in Europe is over. For years, Hitler had avoided numerous attempts to kill him. On several occasions, he was too well guarded for the assassin to get near enough. On others, conspirators lacked determination, either because Hitler and his regime were still too popular, or because the loyalty of the officers of his army prevented them from killing their commander-in-chief. But the one consistent and surprising factor which seems to have saved Hitler for so long was luck. Assassins were picked up by chance, bombs failed to go off, and when they did, he was saved either by a sudden change of plan or the chance moving of a briefcase and the strength of a wooden table. These multiple failures created an aura of invincibility, fueling the Nazi legend that he was guarded by fortune. But his luck would run out in a war-torn bunker, deep under the ruins of the country he brought to disaster. In the end, Hitler died by his own hand, accomplishing what no other man could do.